Hi, everyone. Welcome to session 8 of Erica's Easy SAT Prep. I'm Erica, joined by my lovely students. We're going to go ahead and get right into the lesson today. We're going to be covering, sorry, student I'm admitting. We're going to be covering the rest of the reading section from last week, and as well as some new reading, and rather a new reading section. I have some writing to do and some math. So we have a lot of stuff to do. So go ahead and share my screen and we can get started. Okay, so hopefully, okay, and I shared the link in the chat for everyone. For those of you at home, you can join my Google Classroom. This is the code. Join the Google Classroom and I can share the links with you. There are Google Docs where I copy and paste problems and stuff like that. So in covering this, so when you're doing reading problems, you want to try to simulate, take what it would be like if you were to have the same reading passage during the test, meaning you want to, keep time in mind and everything like that. But since we're spreading this out over 2 weeks, that's not going to be necessarily possible for this particular passage. So that's okay. We'll just focus on analyzing, because if you're not analyzing and understanding things well, your pacing won't matter because you'll just be analyzing things fast. Let me say, you'll just be like not comprehending faster than you wouldn't comprehend if you don't, understand what the passage is saying in the first place. So we don't have to pay too much attention to pacing with this one. Give me 1 second. Just want to make sure everyone's here. I don't have anyone waiting. Oops, sorry. All right, sorry about that. So I'm going to give us a couple minutes to read this again. Actually, can you guys raise your hands if you didn't get a chance to read this last week? Let me know. Actually, a couple of you, I think, were not here last week. So, okay, thank you. We're going to spend a few minutes reading this. And for those of you that were here last week, it'll just be, reacquainting yourself with the passage. But I'm going to give us 5 minutes to read. 5 minutes to read the passage, and then we're going to start answering questions. Sorry, I'm just looking at my other computer. All right, so we're going to come back here. Get my timer. We're going to come back here at 2:58. So 5 minutes. Okay, we'll go over it now. If you haven't had a chance to finish or even answer questions, it's okay because we're going to do another passage anyway. This is just to, there goes my timer. This is just to finish what we started last week. Should have started with this, but because I had it on for this week's stuff, but when reading the passages for the reading section, you want to try to eliminate answer choices. That will help you get to the right answer. So if you can cross out why an answer choice is incorrect, then that'll get you that much closer to finding the correct answer. And it's a good practice to look at the answer choices in that way, because sometimes, not sometimes, a lot of times they're going to seem similar to each other. So you're going to have to differentiate which one is the correct answer. Well, duh, you're going to have to do that. That's answering the question. But what I mean by that is there might be a minute detail in one answer choice that makes it wrong, but it otherwise sounds correct. So when you approach it as trying to eliminate them, once you see one thing that's wrong with an answer choice, you can eliminate it. Just eliminate it and go to the next answer choices. And if something doesn't sound like 100% right, an answer choice, if it doesn't seem 100% right, if you have to sit there and be like, oh, well, maybe, you probably can eliminate it. So, don't waste your time trying to make it make sense, basically. Pardon me, my nose is tickling. Of course, I have bad allergies. Okay, so skim the passage. We're going to go over that in a little bit because we already have this passage to go over. Okay, so last week we did, let me just move this out of my way, this little Zoom bar thing that shows everyone. Okay, so this is something that's incorporated, it's science-based, it's incorporating a graph and stuff like that. And the SAT has graphs and graphics and stuff that they incorporate into some of their sections that have nothing to do with like math, which is what you would think. So it's helpful to get practice with that. Last week we answered 1 through 4. So I will tell you the answer for these. I won't spend too much time on them though, because we covered them last week. Okay, so the main idea of the first 2 paragraphs, this is just in case you were able to do it just now. The main idea is A, that amphibians have traditionally been very persistent, but are now disproportionately endangered. Okay, number 2 is, as used in line 9, compelling most nearly means urgent. This was kind of a point of contention last week because captivating is also very close to, you can also read compelling as captivating in certain contexts. So, but yeah, we did go over that last week. I would like to say too that maybe we can talk about this once we wrap up, but it would behoove you to keep a notebook. I don't know what you guys have as far as notebooks and how you're keeping track of what you're covering when you study for the SAT. I definitely recommend a notebook so you can keep everything in one place. As opposed to, yeah, notebooks. Notebooks are helpful. If you want to separate the notebooks, like have a reading notebook versus a reading notebook and a math notebook, or the 3 sections of reading, writing language, and a math, or if you want to combine them, however, whatever works for you, rather than using loose leaf paper and binders because I feel like it's just easy to lose those things. But if that works for you, that's fine too. But what I would say is, yeah, no, that's even better. DM was suggesting a 3-subject notebook. Yeah, so there you have it. It's already separated for you within the notebook. So yeah, that works perfectly. In the reading section and the writing section, I think it would be helpful for you to, when you encounter words that you don't know in the SAT practice, to write them down and write down a definition. You can use it, you can even write down the sentence that it was used in your SAT practice. So, you know, of course, it's also good to go over it at some point. Like at the end of the week, just open your notebook and look at the words that you just learned that week and see how they were used. Because even if you know the definition of a word, it can be used differently. So this SAT, the test is sometimes testing your knowledge of those kind of less commonly used ways of using certain words. Number 2 here is a good example of that, because we are compelled to choose answer choice B. Sorry, that was corny. But yes, when it's actually answer choice A. So another tip, just keep those, keep like a vocabulary record, and just review them when you get a chance. Just look over them. Even if you don't remember every single thing the word means, you'll be familiar with it. And if your test, it'll help you. It'll also help you in college, honestly. So number two is A. Okay, so number 3, we also covered last week. Number 3 is, A as well. These species are sensitive to environmental changes that might affect other species in the future. Pardon me, I won't go over it this time because if you want to hang back and if you have questions or something, I can help you answer them. Okay, 4 is A, lines 12 through 16. Okay, now we're getting into what we did not cover. So 1 is A, 2 is A, 3 is A, 4 is A. That's funny, I didn't even realize they were all A. So it's not always true that you can tell that you got something wrong because they're the same answer choices. Sometimes it really is just like that. Okay. So did anyone get a chance to get this far? If you did, would you like to share your answer? Because I didn't give too much time for this. So I understand if everyone didn't get a chance to get to here. Another vote for another A. So yes, the author discusses the thermal conformity of amphibians in order to A, show why they are so susceptible to being harmed by changes in their environment. Let me go up to here. Well, actually, I'm going to have a double screen situation. That's what I'm going to do. Just give me 1 second. I'm going to have it on to gonna have it on 2 screens so we can look at it at the same time. I feel like it would be easier that way. Line 27. Thank you, DM. I'm gonna go back to all right, so the question is, the author discusses the thermal conformity of amphibians in order to, these are kind of complex words. If you don't know what a word means, you can always try to figure out what it means based on what it sounds like, because words are connected and they use the same root words or bases and prefixes and stuff. So thermal, thermometer, well, if you've heard of a thermal, which is like the things that keep your coffee hot, the containers you can put your coffee in to keep them hot, thermostat, that all has to do, that THER, well, THERM, that all has to do with temperature. So even if you've never seen the word thermal before, you know it's gonna be something to do with temperature, most likely. So conformity, that's kind of might be kind of a difficult word. Conform, might have heard that in context of like peer pressure. Conforming, conform means to change or adapt to something. So thermal conformity, thermal is temperature, conformity is changing, so changing temperature. So let's go to where DM said line 27, might start, it starts at line 25, it goes into 27. So right here, amphibians are thermal conformers. There's that word combination mentioned again. Thus means because. So let me restart. Amphibians are thermal conformers, thus making them sensitive to environmental temperature changes, which may be especially important for tropical montane species that have experienced little temperature variation. Such species may have little acclimation ability in rapidly changing thermal regimes. So right here, we see it says that the thermal conformer aspect of amphibians makes them sensitive to environmental temperature changes. Let's go back to our question. And the answer choice A, show why they are so susceptible to being harmed by changes in their environments. Line 29, yeah. Such species may have little acclimation ability in rapidly changing thermal regimes. So when you read that they're thermal conformers, and it makes them sensitive to environmental temperature changes, combining that with this line 29, sorry, right here, if you can see my cursor. Such species may have little acclimation ability in rapidly changing thermal regimes. Who knows what regimes mean? We can skip that, just get the main point. If it's changing quickly, it says they have little acclimation ability. So you might not realize what acclimation means. You could take it out even. Sometimes you can use the words around the word to figure out what's being said. You don't have to know every single word, so don't get caught up in the details. Now, if you don't understand a lot of the passage, of course, that's a problem because you're supposed to understand it. That's part of the comprehension. But so let's say I didn't know what acclimation means. Yes, that's exactly what it means, becoming adapted to a new climate. Humans can acclimate, say, if you're the child of immigrants, your parents come over and they acclimate. Well, sometimes people say they assimilate. That's kind of a similar thing, but has more to do with culture, acclimating within the context of culture. So I'm going to read it without the word acclimation, just in case we didn't know what that meant. I'm right here at line 29. Such species may have little, cross out, ability in rapidly changing thermal regimes. So right there, even though I lost a piece of the meaning of that sentence, I got an idea. They have little something ability. They have little ability when they're in rapidly changing thermal regimes. So thermal, I'm like, okay, that means something with temperature. So, and that's because line 25 says how amphibians are thermal conformers, and they're sensitive to environmental temperature change. So combining those two things, it'll help me get answer choice A. I'm going to speed through this a little bit. I'm just going to pick up the pace a little bit. So if you have questions regarding this passage, because I want to have us do a fresh passage since this is from last week. So I want us to use strategies and such. Okay, number 6. Frogs have been studied more than other amphibians because another answer choice A. Yes, and it's all these are answer choice A. It's so weird. I didn't even notice that before. Yes. It is answer choice A. Members of other species are less common and not found in as many places. Yeah, so don't worry about if they all have the same answer, if they're all answer A. I think that the SAT is more like computer randomized as opposed to like your teachers making tests and stuff. So, you know, it would make me second guess myself too, honestly. Yeah, I do too. To this day, I'm like, that can't be right. They can't all be C. And then I remember when I was in school, high school and stuff, college too, if I had to guess something, I would always guess C. I don't know why. Seemed like it was in the middle. That's not a scientific strategy. That's just my own superstition. Anyway, so number 6. All right, so frogs have been studied more. DM gave us the answer choice A, said it was located in line 40. So let's see. Line 40 is here, and the sentence that starts at line 40 is here. It says, most information concerning declines and extinctions has come from studies of frogs, which are the most numerous and by far the most widely distributed of living amphibians. And that answers it perfectly. So it is answer choice A. And it's almost directly stated there. Some of these other problems you have to infer and read and comprehend, but that one's like kind of, oh, and there we go. Number 7 asks, which choice provides the best evidence for the answer to the previous question? DM already gave it to us. It was like line 40, right in the early 40s. Another A. Yeah. So you can't trust that. Actually, where is my? This is different from my other answers. Yeah. I had B as well. I think that on my answer sheet where I put the answer separately, so because by the time we have our sessions, I would forget that I read, I would forget what it was, so I have to remind myself. And the answer choice is different. So I think DM that the one I had given, remember we were having kind of tech difficulties last week, and I have forgotten to copy and paste something on here. So I think that's what happened. But yeah, your answer is correct. Sorry for the confusion. So yes, DK said A. That's lines 41 through 44. So we can go ahead here and look. Most information concerning declines and extinctions has come from studies of frogs. Sicilians are the least well known. Let's say B. Okay, let's look at what B says. B says 44 through 47. Let me go back up. So we're seeing the evidence for this. Frogs have been studied more than other amphibians because our answer choice is A, members of other species are less common and not found in as many places. So you're saying you think it's 44 through 47? Let's see. Sicilians are the least well known. Little information on their status with respect to extinction exists. Global Amphibian Assessment completed its first round of evaluating the status of all then recognized species in 2004, finding 32.5% of the known species of amphibians to be, quote, globally threatened, end quote, by using the established top 3 categories of threat of extinction.
Wait, no, the answer choices are different.
Yeah, they are. That's what I was saying. You're right. For the original one. Remember last week I had to I think I didn't put all of the passage or something. So I think that's my fault because I also have what you have. So I'm not sure what happened with that, but it changed. I think when I reopened it, it totally changed the answer choices. But I think DM, your answer choice was lines 40 through 43. So that's kind of contained within A.
Yeah.
Here. Yeah.
The quotes, not the lines, really.
Right. Yeah. That's true. That makes sense. Sorry about that. Sorry for the confusion. But you're right, DM. For the addition, the version you have, B is correct. And for this one, looking at this one, A is correct. I think when I reopened the practice problems, they kind of switched the questions around, the answer choices. Okay, question 8. The phrase globally threatened primarily serves to show that scientists consider, all right, so 8 is A and I have a B and an A. The phrase globally threatened primarily serves to show that, thank you, scientists consider amphibians' future perilous by the seriousness of the terms. A. So I have a B, I have a couple A's. We say we see it in line 50. Pardon me. So, of course, if it's giving us a line to go to that line. Even if your strategy is skimming, of course, you go to exactly where it's referencing. So line 54, and we're looking for the phrase globally threatened. Sorry for any background noise. So updates from the global amphibian assessments are ongoing and show that although new species described since 2004 are mostly too poorly known to be assessed, greater than 20% of analyzed species are in the top 3 categories of threat. So wait, is this in this right? Line 54. Okay, there's some incongruence with the thing again, sorry. This is actually in line 50 or 49, globally threatened. So So when you say something is globally threatened, again, I'm going to speed through this because there's some inconsistencies with the like the answer choices versus the questions. And I want to do another passage quickly. So the answer choice is answer choice A. Because well, we can look at it by eliminating other things. Let's look at B. Lend authority to the author's argument about amphibian extinction by using a well-recognized phrase. I don't know that the phrase is well recognized, and that nothing in the passage says that it's well recognized. And I believe the only outside knowledge you will have to apply to passages for in the SAT on the SAT. So basically, the only thing you're going to need to know outside of the information they give you in the passage is like what certain words mean. Like earlier, we went over compelled versus captivating. So you can eliminate B. Now C says, quote the scientists of the Global Amphibian Assessment so that readers understand the limited nature of their statistics. That's not really like a main point of what that. So DK says, we can cross out C because I don't think they mentioned it, so it can rely heavily on statistics. Yeah, that's along the lines of what I was about to say. It doesn't really mention their statistics. Well, it says that they don't have caecilians, those kind of amphibians much, but that globally threatened, that doesn't have much to do with their statistics, whether they're limited or not. And D, demonstrate that though amphibians have been referred to as threatened, this term is questionably applied. Here, globally threatened, we're just looking at the use of that phrase, globally threatened. That doesn't imply that that referring to amphibians as threatened, that doesn't imply that it's questionable or there's a doubt there. So that doesn't make sense at all. C and D don't make sense at all. B, you might be tempted to put that if you think that you have to use some outside information for it, but you don't, so you can eliminate B. And A, we know that that's true. That's the correct answer because we eliminate all the other answer choices, but also because a phrase like globally threatened, it has a sense of urgency. It shows that if something's threatened versus globally threatened means all over the world. It's global, all over the globe. So that makes it more important. So the answer choice here, again, is surprise A. Or at least match that up to, yeah, it's A in the last one too. The other edition, the other version. Okay, so number 9. The graph supports the statement in the last paragraph about the evaluation completed in 2004 by A. Oh, you guys are quick. Yes, A is correct. Demonstrating that approximately 1/3 of amphibian species are in the top 3 categories of threat. So the graph that's the graph. What does the question say? The graph supports a statement in the last paragraph about the evaluation completed in 2004 by so sometimes when you have these graphs, even like in math as well, sometimes it's better to come to kind of look at the graph first before you go to the question, because if you go to the question before you kind of try to like just look at the graph really quickly. I'm not saying understand every point, but sometimes if you have your own conclusion before, it depends. I recommend trying different things and seeing what works for you. Hopefully everyone is taking the test, kind of, you have some time to study for it. So you can really take your time to look at everything. So, so let's go back to the question. So we can eliminate things. So B says, showing that only 1% of amphibians have gone extinct in the wild, despite predictions to the contrary. So all of this wording is very important because that's a lot of seniors haven't taken the test yet and are choosing SAT test optional. What do you mean by test optional?
Apparently, they can choose like to not take the test, and they can select something that they don't have to take it. I think it's like determined by their GPA and like their AP credits.
Oh, I see. Okay. I mean, is that because of the coronavirus, or was that already in practice before? Do you
No,
know?
that was because of coronavirus, and then they have the chance to do that because of COVID.
Right. I think that I know, of course, because of COVID, that schools have waived the SAT requirement. Some of them, but the thing is, I know that based on what the schools have said, the ones that have waived the SAT requirement, of course, they're gonna have to judge you on something. So it would be, AP credit and grades. But also, that's not going to last. One, as we adapt to, pardon me, drink a little water. As we adapt to coronavirus, they're going to find a way to get everyone back to testing for the SAT. So that's one thing. And two, your grades and everything are going to be more heavily weighted. So I feel like that's just for only this upcoming semester. Because the way that schools phrased it, they want to go back to, now there might be permanent changes, I'm not sure, but the way they phrased it, that was like a temporary situation. In addition to that, I know I've told you guys about like scholarships too. So I feel like I feel like it's good to take it because it also helps to reveal any gaps in knowledge or whatever. It helps you prepare for college, prepare for your first semester. I know if you guys are not applying to school for this upcoming fall semester, if you're sophomore, juniors, freshmen, I said that in out of order, you probably will still, by the time it comes for you to start college, I believe they will start requiring it again. Also, still scholarships. Some of these kids don't want scholarships, I guess. But anyway, so so the wording is very exact. So answer choice B, despite predictions to the contrary. So answer choice B says that the graph shows that only 1% of amphibians have gone extinct in the wild. Okay, so let's look at our graph. So we see the black part, the darkest part is extinct. The ones that have gone extinct. And that is actually 1%. We see that right there. So let's go back to this problem. It says, answer choice B says, showing that only 1% of amphibians have gone extinct in the wild. That part is true. But the next part, despite predictions to the contrary, the graph doesn't say anything about any predictions. It's just showing you, it says breakdown of known, sorry, let me center that a little bit. Breakdown of known amphibian species by red list category. It doesn't talk anything about predictions or anything like that. This is just what they know. It's not projections or predictions. So because of that, answer choice B is wrong. So that kind of touches on what I was speaking about going into the answer choices, looking at them with the goal of eliminating the incorrect ones. So answer choice B, the first half of that is right. We saw that 1% of amphibians have gone extinct. That's correct based on the graph. But when we read that part that comes after the comma, despite predictions to the contrary, that's just untrue. So even though the first part is right, just eliminate the whole thing. The whole thing is wrong. Because every word counts in the answer choices. So option C, highlighting that scientists have not collected enough data on a significant number of amphibian species. The graph doesn't really, so the question again is, the graph supports the statement in the last paragraph about the evaluation completed in 2004. Well, the last paragraph. Oops. Let me use the other thing. The last paragraph is talking about how they evaluated the then recognized species in 2004, found that amphibians were globally threatened. Oh, pardon me. And then it's going on about how some other ones, new species, are too poorly known to be assessed. So it does touch on the species that are not known about, and they therefore cannot provide too much data on them. But the question again is asking what the graph supports. So we just kind of skim the last paragraph just to reiterate what we're looking for. But the question number 9 is asking, what does the graph support basically out of that last paragraph? So answer choice C, highlighting that scientists have not collected enough data on a significant number of amphibian species. No, it doesn't. The graph doesn't really show that. The graph shows what they have collected data on, so you can scratch C out. So D, proving that the remaining species of amphibians will be extinct in the future. No, it doesn't really say that. It's just simply showing you this big portion here is, let me show you it's kind of hard even to see because of the darkness level. Least concern. So it's not really proving, nor does it say in the passage that the remaining species of amphibians will become extinct in the future. So answer choice A again is correct. We know that because it says demonstrating that approximately 1/3 of amphibian species are in the top 3 categories of threat. Okay, well, let's confirm that. Top 3 categories of threat. So we can look at the top 3 categories of threat by looking at the legend or the key for the graph. So the white part is data deficient, so we're not even going to count that. This kind of, these tones are similar. Near threatened and least concern are kind of similar in shade. But it's actually kind of hard for me to see even. But so we're seeing that it goes up from least concern to most concerned, except for extinction. Extinction is at the bottom. But I guess it's because it's at the bottom because you can't count them because they're already extinct. So that's bad for them. So the top 3 categories, when you don't consider extinction: vulnerable, endangered, and critically endangered. So we see that's a chat comment. Yeah, kind of hard to say. Sorry, just checking something. Oh my goodness, okay. So there's a little bit of math required here. You can estimate. So at the end of the day, this is not the math section. This is, I guess some kid is like on a scooter outside. Sorry if you can hear that. This is the reading section so you can estimate. So vulnerable, endangered, critically endangered. So vulnerable is like this right here, this kind of, I don't even know how to describe it, the color. It's grayscale, so it's all gray. But this medium dark gray. Endangered is this slightly lighter gray. Right? No, that's near threatened, sorry. This is vulnerable right here. This like the 11%, let me just refer to that. And then endangered is this 13%, and then critically endangered is this 8%. You can round all of these up or down, 8%, 13%, 11%. You can kind of round those all up in the case of 8% to 10, or down in the case of 13 and 11. So you have 3 slices of the pie that are about 10%. So that's 30%, so that's 1/3. So that confirms A. So you have to, kind of incorporate some math into that, but you could estimate it quickly. So question 10, gonna speed through the rest of these other two. Question 10 is A, shocker. DM says line 44, we'll look at it quickly. 44. So it says information from the graph and the passage suggests that the second largest category includes most of the world. Well, let's look at the second largest category. So we see these little slices, these kind of small to medium slices of pie, and we have this huge slice, and we have this big, but not as big as the biggest slice. So this is the second largest. You can tell just by looking. You can also tell because of the percentage. It's the next one down from 38. 38% is the biggest portion a single category is holding in this graph. 23% is the next one. So we can look at the legend or the key for the graph and see that data deficient for the white part means we don't have any, we don't have enough data for it. And we also know that, as DM had said, line 44, Sicilians are the least well known. So you can combine those two pieces of information and infer that question 10, the answer is A, because yeah, we don't know much about Sicilians. We know plenty about frogs, montane amphibians. It's like, what is that? That was referred to earlier, but it wasn't really brought up again. So it's kind of a minor point. So yeah, number 10 is A. If you need me to go over some things more you don't understand, we can speak about it after the session. Okay, number 11. The third largest category represents amphibians that are classified as, so this is another graph A, thank you. And again, it is answer choice A. I didn't realize they were all the same. This is another chance to interpret the graph. So let's see the third largest category. The third largest category represents amphibians that, let me go to the graph. We have to first ascertain the third largest category. The first largest is 38%, meaning that's the biggest. The second largest number after 38% is, we're looking 23%. Now, the third largest, meaning it's just under 23, is 13%. I mean, that's close to 11 and 8, but still, it is technically still the third largest. And as we had said before, the third largest group, this, again, lightish gray color, this 13%, corresponds to the endangered portion. So answer choice A. Okay, so we're done with session 7, finally. Now, we're going to get right into another session. What I mean by that is another reading passage. I'm going to drop this in the chat. We're going to incorporate some other techniques. We can work on speed. Please, everyone, open that up. So, what I want us to do here is, again, we can always, when you look at the answer choices, try to eliminate them. Go in thinking like, how can I eliminate? Sometimes too, the answer choices will the correct answer will stick out so obviously, and all the other choices are wrong. So of course you don't have to eliminate in those instances. You can just answer the question. But sometimes when you're not sure if 2 answer choices sound like they could be right, one of them is right and one of them is wrong, and that's what you do now. So what you do then is you start to look at the details and make sure, that you're eliminating one of them. Okay, so for this passage, before you read it, I want you guys to skim the passage, then read the questions. Basically follow these instructions. Skim the passage, then read the questions. Don't try to understand every single line, kind of just go through, get the main idea. Now, if you realize you've been skimming it and you didn't get anything, you might want to reread it. But before you start, I always like to prime myself and be like, okay, prep yourself like, okay, I'm about to read this. And just try to remind yourself to stay focused. And also maybe even try to trick yourself to think that you are interested in it. Sometimes that helps. So skim the passage, then read the questions. As you're skimming, you're trying to keep in your mind that you're trying to find the main point of everything. Ask yourself, why is the author saying what they're saying? After you skim, go to the questions. If the question then refers to a specific line number, then go back to that line number and understand the text around it. So when we say the text around it, we're talking about probably the text right before it and even the text after it. So let's say it's referring to line 49. I might want to read lines 47 and 48 and or lines 50 and 51 to know what line 49 is talking about. Also, if you can't answer a question within 30 seconds, skip it. That is definitely more so for when you're taking the test. But we could try it now too, just to work on our timing. So what we're going to do is, what we're going to do is, I'm going to give you 10 minutes to read and answer these, read this passage, and answer the questions. Keep in mind that you're trying to skim. Follow that advice and see how it works. Sometimes when you read a little faster too, like in skimming, it helps you pay attention to it more. So you don't have to, when you start to try to go slow and you're trying to pay attention to every detail, sometimes it can make you read slower and you lose focus, at least for me. So we're going to try to skim the passage, then start to go to the questions. And of course, if something is referred to specifically like a line, then go to that line and like read the the lines that came before and after it. So we will go over time a little bit. I'll ask which you know, guys, if you want to continue to do like a couple math problems after, that'll definitely put us a little over time, but we'll at least probably go to like 4:15. We didn't really start doing stuff until like 15 minutes after we started because I wanted to wait to get everyone a chance to log on and everything. So I'm going to give you 10 minutes to read, to skim it, go to the questions, answer as many as you can. So we're going to come back here. Let me set my timer. We're coming back at 3:58. All right, I'm going to step away. So, well, actually, yeah, if anyone, if you can't see it, let me know. I have, it should be in the chat though. Actually, let's say 3:59. Because I'm still talking and it's 3:49 already. All right, let me mute myself. Alrighty. So we will start to go over everything. I will again use the double. Okay. Okay, so when you well, I would ask, but we can just start answering a few questions and see how everyone did. And then I'll ask you how the technique went for you each individually. Okay. Oops, not clicking. Alrighty, so okay, this is always a question, basically, which is asking about the main, thank you, the main point or the main idea. So central claim, main idea is the same thing. So let me see, I believe I have some chat responses. Okay, I have a B, I have a C. Can you guys talk about first the C? Can you talk about why you think it's C? DK? Are you able to unmute yourself to say why you think it's answer choice C? Maybe not. All right. Oh, okay. Right, so yes, that might be kind of loud. Okay, thank you for answering. It talks about how he doesn't approve the way the Constitution is. Yeah, thank you. So, so answer choice C says the objection to the Constitution can be dismissed unless they are unanimous. So, let's go back to the, remove this thing here. Okay. It definitely does talk about how he doesn't want to, or he thinks there is an issue with the Constitution. So the objections to the Constitution can be dismissed unless they are unanimous. This is actually lines 30 through 34. Thank you, thank you. So let's look at 30 through 34. Okay, right here. For when you assemble a number of men to have the advantage of their joint wisdom, you inevitably assemble with those men all their prejudices, their passions, their errors of opinion, their local interests, and their selfish views. So, okay. I'm trying to think how I would frame what I'm about to say. So throughout the passage, it's obvious that, who is this? Jefferson, I already forgot the name of the person. I just, Benjamin Franklin, sorry. Throughout the passage, it's clear there are some objections to the Constitution, meaning it's not perfect. And he says why they're not perfect. DK said that these lines 30 through 34 show that Benjamin Franklin's reasoning for why it's imperfect, which is because, gave me more in the chat. I chose the answer C because I feel like he was saying the gathering of different opinions wouldn't be able to dismantle the Constitution without it being unanimous. Okay. Yes, it is DM. That is correct. So DK, referring to you by your initials, let me just read your comment again so I can address. So the answer is C because I feel like he was saying the gathering of different opinions wouldn't be able to dismantle the Constitution without it being unanimous. So I think that is, that's a, you would be tempted to infer that from this, from lines 30 through 34. But I don't think there's actually a place where he says unanimous. Let me just make sure. DK, do you have a line where he said that it can't be, that it needs a unanimous vote? Well, that kind of says it. 50 to 53. '50 starts here. Nations, foreign nations, as well as among ourselves, from our real or apparent unanimity. Much of the strength and efficiency of any government in procuring and securing happiness to the people depends on opinion, on the general opinion of the goodness of the government, as well as wisdom. So I'm going past what you told me. So that part is actually, the kind of writing here is, written in a very antiquated style. The part 50 to 53 showed me is actually referring to, okay. So let me start reading this. So if everyone, I'm going to start right here at line 56, right here where my cursor is. If every one of us, in returning to our constituents, were to report the objections he has had to it and endeavor to gain partisans in support of them, right there he's saying, if all of us were to return to our constituents, the people we're representing, and tell what issues we have with the Constitution to gain support of those issues, to have backing for those issues. I'm going to continue reading. In support of them, comma, I'm right here. We might prevent its being generally received and thereby lose all the salutary effects and great advantages resulting naturally in our favor among foreign nationals, as well as among ourselves, from our real or apparent unanimity. So this is talking about, this is a very dense sentence. and it's using words we're not kind of familiar with, like the phrasing is off. The words you can kind of know what they're talking about just from the definitions, but the phrasing is different from what we're used to. So he's saying that sometimes it's with these kinds of phrasings and sentences, this is taken from the history section of the reading passages. It's helpful to kind of keep in mind actually grammar rules. So a lot of this is a fluffy paragraph. There are a lot of words, there are commas, there are, dependent clauses and all that stuff. Pardon me. So it's helpful to actually, once you read it, kind of take a step back and say like, okay, so what are they actually trying to say? Even when you're skimming, that will take practice though. So a lot of improving on this is honestly practicing, and even practicing, like say we have this practice today, maybe you don't want to practice for the rest of the day because this is like an hour and a half to 2 hours, but you might want to practice the next day. So you're practicing, around the same time that we're having these lessons. It'll stick better rather than you practicing like in 4 days or something. If you practice in 4 days, that's still helpful, of course. And also practicing for a little bit each day, depending on how soon your SAT is. So, okay, back to this part of the passage. If we keep in mind the subject and the predicate of this sentence, the subject is what is it talking about? What nouns is this sentence actually talking about? And what action is being done? The predicate is the verb phrase, meaning verbs are, what is being done. So that's official language. So basically, despite all this fluffy language and all these extra words here, once we read it, we might be confused and be like, okay, so what is this sentence about? What is being done? And what is being mentioned? How is it being done, I guess? So back to this little area where line 46, every one of us in returning to our constituents, et cetera, up until line 51, 2, up to line 52, where it ends in unanimity. So what this is saying is, it says if every one of us in returning to our constituents were to report the objections he has had to it and endeavor to gain partisans in support of them, we might prevent its being generally received and thereby lose all the salutary effects and great advantages resulting naturally in our favor among foreign nationals as well as among ourselves from our real or apparent unanimity. So it's saying we're getting something from, it says from our real or apparent unanimity. So real unanimity means they're actually unanimous. Apparent unanimity means they just appear to be unanimous. So what this line is saying is that they're getting something, they're gaining something from either actually being unanimous or appearing to be unanimous. Because it says up here at line 50, great advantages resulting, and then it has that clause in between, from our real or apparent unanimity. Basically, this line is saying that if we question the contents of the Constitution, if we go to our constituents and tell them what we our issues with it and we get support, the advantage we get from making foreign nationals, meaning say, I don't know, some officials from France, this is America, right? This is the United States in like the 17th century, whatever. So foreign nations, favorite among foreign nations, that would be England, France, other nations that are not United States that they were in conversation with. There's some favor that comes from that. And it comes from real or apparent unanimity. This kind of passage is confusing. It's the phrasing is off. Let me erase this annotation I did. Going back to the question. So the question, The author's central claim in the passage is that the correct answer is D. The Constitution is adequate and should be passed without objection. Now, we have an example of this because, oops, sorry, I'm trying to go to the next page. We have an example of it being D because, okay, so Constitution is adequate and should be passed without objection. So let's go to the passage. We just underlined one where it's a point where it said, where it was backing up that claim. Right here, it's saying that if we tell of our objections, it might prevent it being generally received and thereby lose all the salutary effects. And from here, let's say we don't know what in the world he's talking about, lose the salutary effects. What does that mean? Right here, we're clued in that it's bad to lose those things because, well, he says lose here. He also says we would lose, that's a terrible, sorry, that looks terrible, but we would lose all the salutary effects, whatever that means, and great advantages. So right there, we know that, we know what great advantages means. So we know that if we start to object, if there's objection to the Constitution, we'll lose whatever this word means and great advantages. So we don't want to object to the Constitution because we're going to lose great advantages. What are the great advantages? You can keep reading to find out, but right, just from reading that part, we know that Benjamin Franklin thinks we shouldn't object to it because we'll lose the advantages. Now let me look at, and even at the end, just want to give you different points of, oh, so let me give you the lines there. That's a better way. So line 46 to around 50, 51, let's say 51. So that's one area of evidence. Another one is the last paragraph. I don't know if you guys remember when I said if you run out of time, read the, well, try to skim it very quickly and read the first paragraph and last paragraph if you find yourself running out of time. That won't always help you completely, but so here it says, I cannot help expressing a wish that every member of the convention who may still have objections to it would with me on this occasion doubt a little of his own infallibility. His own infallibility. Infallible, do y'all know what infallible means? Infallible means, oh, I have a comment. No. Infallible means that, let me see if someone else knows. Yes, exactly, capable of making mistakes. So if you're fallible, that means you can fall. Well, we could look at what does it look like? There's fall in it. So if you fall, that's a mistake. Just giving you different ways to remember words. So if you're fallible, which is you could just take off the IN. Fallible means capable of making mistakes or erroneous. Experts can be fallible. So when you put the IN in front of a word, a lot of times, oops, it negates what that word means. Yes, exactly. So me telling you this is something to remember because this is going to help you. If you don't know what a word means, you can start to piece words together based on their constituent parts. So infallible. So fallible, it sounds like fallable, like you're able to fall. So that's one way to realize what it means, even if you don't know what it means. You're able to fall. So fallable. I'm able to fall, meaning I'm capable of making mistakes. Infallible, that in negates whatever it's in front of. Oops. So if I am able to fall, if I'm fallible, whatever. If I'm infallible, I'm incapable of making mistakes or being wrong. This might be something you want to add to your vocabulary list. Something to help? What do you mean? Okay. Oh yeah, nice. Looks like I need permission for it. But I can send us some vocab. Oh, I'm downloading. I can send us some vocabulary stuff to work on too. Oh, it seems like it's opening. Okay,
It's easier to like kind of read it because like it shows the cartoon version, so it kind of helps.
Yeah. No, I love this. I think I had this actually. This vocabulary book in middle school. What do you call it? The cartoons look similarly. But yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you for sharing that. Let me erase these things. So back to the point I was making. There are different parts that you can, there are different lines that will give you the evidence for that question. But this, I'm just giving you a couple to choose from. There are other ones too. So the last paragraph. Even if you don't know what infallibility means, let's cross it out. He says, on the whole, sir, I cannot help expressing a wish that every member of the convention who may still have objections to it. So here we have objections. We know that the Constitution is imperfect. He's talking about people who still have objections to it. He says, would with me on this occasion doubt a little of his own infallibility. Well, let's pretend we don't know what that means. And to make manifest our unanimity. To make manifest our unanimity, well, we know unanimity means unanimous, but let's say we didn't. Let's ignore that. Let's say all we know is all that the words that we're sure of are put his name to this instrument. So if someone's putting their name to something, this instrument, okay, what instrument? We're talking about the Constitution. When you read these passages from history, just be ready that they're going to be extra. They wore powdered wigs back then, and makeup, the men. So they're extra. So just keep that in mind. They're the kind of extra for no reason. So they're extra in their wording, and they're dramatic. They live for drama. So he's talking about put his name to this instrument. This instrument is just a tool. So he's saying put your name on it, basically. So when you're reading these history passages and from, the founding fathers and all that, just keep in mind that they're extra. So they're going to say some very simple things, but they're going to say it complicatedly or, in a complicated way. I don't think complicatedly is a word. Pretend like I didn't say that. Anyway, so the correct answer is D. Number 2. We got a B We got a B. Does anyone disagree with B? All right, we got a couple B's. Let's see. We can start off by trying to eliminate stuff. There are a couple points where Franklin is speaking about himself. That's what that, well, let's go back first and read the question really quickly. The question asks, oh, we have another answer. Eliminate indecisive, yes. The question asks in the passage, Franklin characterizes himself as someone who is sarcastic, experienced, cynical, or indecisive. So right there, yes, those are very easy to eliminate. So right there, we're going to refer to when he was referring to himself. We're going to look at that portion. So there were a couple of times when he was referring to himself, but it wasn't, you know, it was at key points. So let's see. He says, I'm not sure I will never approve them. Okay. He says right here, I have experienced, ooh, that's a terrible underline. I have experienced many instances of being obliged by better information or fuller consideration. It is therefore that the older I grow, the more apt I am to doubt my own judgment. So the older I grow, that hints to him being older, and that kind of tells you how he's like experienced. Let's look at some other things. Wish it only stayed where I put it, this annotating, but it's helpful. Let me erase that real quick. I think that's the main part of where he speaks of himself, really. That's the main part where he speaks, sorry. That's the main part where he's speaking about himself. So otherwise, he's speaking about what he thinks of the Constitution, which is that it is imperfect and that other people, like, you know, people are going to think it's imperfect and not agree. Excuse me. Sorry. So DM was right. He's not really giving us a sarcastic tone. We can cross that out. Indecisive. He seems like he has a decision. He has a decision that we should pass this. And he also, yeah, he knows that he objects. He has objections to it, but then we should pass it. So cynical. That little part where he speaks about himself, because remember, he's speaking more what he thinks about the Constitution, what he thinks about people coming together to vote on something, and that is that they're bound to disagree for whatever reason, various reasons. So those are the main things he's speaking about. So in the part where he speaks about himself, pardon me, he doesn't really characterize himself as cynical. Cynical is someone who is kind of jaded, looks, you know, is pessimistic, looks on the, you know, bad side of things, views things negatively. He doesn't really say that. He describes himself as experienced. And we know that because of those things. Oops, I meant to do eraser. We know that because of the parts. It was very brief. It's kind of easy to miss in a way. But he's talking here about the older he grows, the older I grow. I have experienced many instances of being obliged by better information. that's not even like, that's mentioning the word experience, but it's not as strong evidence as the older I grow. Because that's the one part where he's just speaking on himself. Let me erase this. Okay. So the answer is B, experienced. Ooh. I thought my computer, the little wheel was spinning, so I didn't know if it was frozen. All right. Okay, now, number 3, which choice provides the best evidence for the answer to the previous question? Pardon me. A. Let's look at A. A says, sorry, lines 7 through 10. So 7 through 10, so we have 10, 9, 8, 7 here. It is therefore that the older I grow, the more apt I am to doubt my own judgment and to pay more respect to the judgment of others. So we just covered that. This is asking for the evidence that we use to answer number 2. We covered that already in answering number 2. So the answer is A, lines 7 through 10. Okay. Number 4. In line 33, the word local most nearly means we have geographical, provincial, nearby, or domestic. This is tricky, I think. Yes, what would DK? We have a C and we have a B. It's close. It's hard. These I would say it B sorry, I'm getting another chat comment. B. See, I'm tempted to put C as well. Let's go to where it says it's trying to move this thing here. Line 33, I believe. So when you say it can be crossed out, okay, let's read I'm going to read the part that includes that sentence. We're looking at line 33, the word local. I'm going to start here and read the complete sentence. For when you assemble a number of men to have the advantage of their joint wisdom, you inevitably assemble with those men all their prejudices, their passions, their errors of opinion, their local interests, and their selfish views. So, DK, I liked how you substituted your answer choice in for that word, because it's asking the word local most nearly means, okay, let's substitute it in. For when you assemble a number of men to have the advantage of their joint wisdom, you inevitably assemble with those men all their prejudices, their passions, their errors of opinion, their nearby interests, and their selfish views. So you're right. It's easy to, it's tempting to choose nearby interests because local can mean nearby. So taken out of the context of this sentence, nearby means the same thing. If we put the next answer choice, sorry, let me finish my comment on the word nearby. Nearby means the same thing as local, taken out of the context of the sentence. But when we read nearby, we put it into the sentence. It doesn't quite fit. So I like that strategy used. I think that is the right strategy to use for these context, like in context, in the passage definitions they're asking for. You can replace the word they're asking. If you're not sure, if you're sure already, just go ahead and choose the answer you think it is. But if you're having some issue, or if you just want to check, actually, you can put the word into the sentence and reread it, make sure it makes sense. So let's input geographical. For when you assemble a number of men to have the advantage of their joint wisdom, you inevitably assemble with those men all their prejudices, their passions, their errors of opinion, their geographical interests, and their selfish views. That kind of doesn't make sense. Like, what are they interested in geography-wise? This is like the 1700s we're talking about. What are they interested in? There's all these other things they're talking about. Basically, their prejudices, basically their own. This is setting the scene that they're thinking only from their own experiences. It's talking about their prejudices, their passions, their errors of opinion, their selfish views. So it's talking about them kind of being in a bubble. So their geographical interest doesn't quite fit the tone that the rest of the sentence is giving for these men. The last one is domestic. Domestic means kind of like house oriented, like your home, not just a house, but like your home. So if we implant domestic into where local is, their home interest, that could kind of maybe work. But we also want to keep in mind, I'm going to add something here for us. Oops. Give me 1 second. Gotta copy and paste something very quickly. This is number 4. Okay. Okay. So provincial means, again, you can break it up and try to see what it means. It might not help, but you could try. I say it might not help because provincial, it sounds like province. A province is just an area, like a region, a province. It's separate from like the main part of a city. Usually it does allude to some things kind of like in the countryside. So if you say something is provincial, it kind of, it has a negative connotation. So this example here, number 2, it says, ever concerning the regions outside the capital city of a country, blah, blah, blah. And the sentence they give as an example says, the whole exhibition struck one as being very provincial. It says unsophisticated or narrow-minded. That fits more in with what the point he's making here when he's talking about, some of these things that he's mentioning here, most of these things he's mentioning that these men have are negative. One is like neutral, but he's talking about their prejudices. That's negative. It has negative connotation. Their passions, that could be neutral, it could be good or bad. So let's say that's neutral. Their errors of opinion, that's negative. Their local interests, well, we're trying to figure out what that means, so let's leave that alone for now. And their selfish views. So that again is a negative thing. So most of these things he's listing that these men have are negative, and they're based on their own, these men's, their own worldview that's particular to them. So when we go back to trying to figure out what local means here, the best definition is provincial, because provincial means kind of like you're in your own bubble, you live in a province, and you are concerned, kind of like, you know, when people say small towns, and how people act in a small town, that's kind of what that's alluding to. Now, it's very understandable that you would not know what that word means. It's not typically used. It sounds better than the other ones when you put it into the sentence, but that would be, I would totally understand if you didn't get that one right, honestly. That's hard, because that provincial is not a word that we commonly use. I would add that to your vocabulary. Definitely. But I also put the definition for it in the session. We're gonna stop at number 5. We're gonna do this one and then stop for today. If you guys have an answer for number 5. So according to the passage, the main objection to immediate passage of the Constitution is that it is, well, we can think about what is Franklin talking about. The whole passage that we read, he's talking about, said pick C because it wasn't, you know, it wasn't A or D. I didn't know what B was. So that's fair. We know what unpopular means. We may or may not know what partisan means. Might have to add that to your vocabulary list. Partisan sounds like party, kind of political parties. So despotic is, he mentions, so you don't know what it is, you're going to be unfamiliar with it. So be despotic. He mentions despotism. Despotism and despot are related. Despotism, line 26. He mentions it. I'm trying to find the beginning of the sentence. Geez, it's so long. In these sentiments, sir, I agree to this Constitution with all its faults, if they are such, because I think a general government necessary for us, and there is no form of government but what may be a blessing to the people if well administered. That's just fluff. He's just being extra. And believe farther that this is likely to be well administered for a course of years and can only end in despotism, as other forms have done before it, when the people shall become so corrupted as to need despotic government, being incapable of any other. So right here we have, if we don't know what despot means, we know that it's bad because you need it when people are so corrupted. It says as to need despotic government. So DM, you were saying how you didn't know what despot meant. Despot, it means like a tyrant, tyrannical, despotic, like Hitler or something. Kind of someone who does whatever they want, has no regard for the laws governing the land, maybe like a certain president that is on his way out, you know, has no regard for like the people, does whatever they want, basically. I don't know if I can, let me do this on the computer. I'm just going to copy the meeting. So, out of here. Another word to add. Okay. Oops, I have my annotation on. Okay. Despot. A ruler or other person who holds absolute power, typically one who can exercise it in a cruel or oppressive way. I feel like a Hitler, you know. The thing is, you came to the conclusion, DM, anyway, even though you didn't know what all of the words meant. And sometimes, yes, the SAT is testing vocabulary, but sometimes it's if you think you know what the answer is, just choose that answer. You don't have to worry about if you don't know what a word means. Because the thing is, if you're on the test and you don't know what a word means, you're still not going to know what the word means, even if you worry about the fact that you don't know what it means. So if you feel confident in something, you should go ahead and pick that one. I say the main objection all throughout the passage, Franklin is talking about how the Constitution is imperfect and how there are objections to it. So right there, you can know that it's imperfect. There are several lines that we could look at too. Right here, just trying to find a different, I want to use a different line than we've mentioned. From such an assembly, can a perfect production be expected? Right there, he's saying, can a perfect production be expected? That question is implying that he doesn't think a perfect production can be expected. So if he doesn't think a perfect production can be expected, then he expects an imperfect one. He says, it therefore astonishes me, sir, to find this system approaching so near to imperfection, so near to perfection, so near to perfection means that it is still imperfect. Perfection is 100% or not. It's either perfect or it's not. So to be near to perfection is still to be imperfect. So the answer is C, imperfect. That was also part of the main point of the whole passage too. So how did you all find the skimming? We'll stop here for this passage and come back to do 6 through 11 next time. You can unmute yourselves. How did you feel? Or if you can put in the chat, better strategy. Yeah. I think so too. I think it's quicker as well to do it this way. So I'm going to stop recording, but you guys hang back. I'm just going to close it out. So we have come to the conclusion of another session of Erica's Easy Prep. Join us next week, Saturday at 2:30 for our session 9. We will probably finish this reading portion and get into some language and math as well. All right, so see you then.